Hey, what's going on? Jake DeRosa here, your favorite Sacramento area real estate agent. And today we are talking about insurance and specifically what things you need to know if you are moving up into the hills, so non-urban type area home, and also too renter or investor insurance. There's an additional subset of insurances, and I've got Alex from Goosehead Insurance with us. And as always, if you like the content I'm putting out and you enjoy the information, please subscribe, hit like, and let's get into it. So, Alex, share with us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your journey, and then we can jump into kind of the topic here.
Awesome. So, I very honestly have never been invited to speak about insurance before because it's so boring. No one wants to talk about it. So, thank you for giving me a platform to talk about my passion. Um, so, my name is Alexandra Trent. I'm the Goosehead Insurance Agency owner in Sacramento, and I am strangely passionate about insurance. And I'm also strangely passionate about helping people find home ownership. So I love working in the real estate markets. I love working with investors. I love working with people who are first time home buyers because it's so important to be able to add that layer of happiness into your life. So thank you for having me first off, Jake.
Yeah,
Um, Sorry, I will ramble about insurance all day, so I apologize.
no worries. So
Uh,
let's talk about the moving up in the hills. There's
yeah.
the fire insurance and those types of things, and spend a couple minutes there as to what's that look like, what folks that are buying up there need to know about their insurance cost maybe, and I'll let you kind of take it away because you know way more about this than I do. So
Yeah, sadly, we've had to learn more and more about this as the years have gone on. Anyone in California knows that we are in a strange situation when it comes to weather. Things are getting hotter, things are getting wetter, kind of what patterns are getting less predictable. And that's caused a lot of commotion in the insurance markets. So we're in this like strange place right now with insurance markets where a lot of insurers are trying to not have certain homes, certain risks on their books. I'm no attorney, so please, I'm just giving you all my best practices and kind of my knowledge of being in the industry for over a decade. So take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt, but I'm going to tell you guys what I know as an insurance professional, also an investor, and someone who lives up in the hills. So insurance
nailed
market,
all three of them.
yeah, I'm the trifecta. So here I am
Right,
talking
there it
talking
is.
about my passion. So insurance up in the hills, obviously, if you live up there already, you know it is wild. People who have been with insurance companies for 20, 30 years are getting letters, and the letters say, hey, we don't want your business anymore. And that feels really bad to people. And then people who are trying to find affordable housing in an interest market or an interest rate market or in a housing situation where maybe they don't want to be urban anymore. They go, I would love to have a little farm with acreage up there or be up in the pines, and that would just be beautiful. And then they start shopping and then they go through their loan professional and then they get a quote for their insurance and it's 10, 15, 20, $30,000, and all of a sudden their dream of living in the pines is burned to dust, unfortunately. So with that being said, there's certain people that can help kind of figure out a situation, and knowledge is power in these moments. So really understanding kind of what you're getting into, what the costs are, and how you can kind of mitigate some of those issues is going to be really important. So the program that most people know about, and if you live anywhere near Lake Tahoe or around anywhere with a tree or a hill, you've probably heard of the California Fair Plan.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about that.
Yeah, and you probably know nothing good, right? It's all just pain.
Yeah, it sounds bad. It sounds bad for sure. I've had some
Yeah.
stories, and it's definitely just it's a cost of living and getting that acreage, and it kind of going that way is, I mean, it seems to be spreading, right? Like more places are getting under the California Fair housing plan. So yeah,
Well, and it's not just kind of the areas, but older houses or houses that are on beams or piers, houses that may not have a conventional roof. The insurance markets are just getting harder, and they don't want to take on a risk that's really risky. So that's kind of what we're talking to clients about. So for new homeowners or homeowners who are looking to move, it's really important to understand that there is going to be a higher cost to your insurance if you are out in the middle of nowhere. That is unfortunately a fact of life. But if you're aware of that and you can plan on it and you can kind of negotiate your prices to be comfortable for you, you can still have that little slice of heaven out there. Um, Insurance is expensive. It's going to get more expensive. People ask me, they're like, "Hey, 5 years down the road, do you think it's going to be less expensive?" I don't have a crystal ball, but I would say probably not. It's probably going to get worse.
Yeah. I think it has to do with a lot of supply and demand, right? Similar to what the housing looks like right now, with less supply and more demand, prices grow up, and as companies are exiting our space, we're obviously seeing more costs involved and things like that. So
Yeah, companies stay in business because they're profitable, not because they're charities for the most part.
100%.
So March of Dimes isn't providing insurance for us in California, unfortunately. I wish they would. But for most folks, it's going to look a little bit more risky. So there's some things you can do to mitigate that cost,
Yeah, let's
though.
hear that.
Yeah. So number one, the thing that you can do is educate yourself. So any client who's looking to move, any client who is looking to purchase their first house, or someone who may be thinking about shopping for insurance or not paying their insurance bill accidentally, should be aware of the fact that their insurance cost is going to be higher if they need to get into a new insurance, most likely. The
Okay.
second part of that is, you can
So
do.
so hold on real quick. Hold on. So
Sorry.
so let's say, for instance, I accidentally let my lapse. But a lot of people get escrow accounts set up. But what if I accidentally let my insurance lapse? I have to go get new insurance and go with the new pricing. Is that kind of what I'm hearing? Okay.
That is correct. So
Definitely
if
don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that, please, and especially not on your auto, not your home either. With your insurance, I mean, how many people get 3,000 pieces of mail and they don't open it?
Right.
And that's
Right.
insurance companies' primary way of communicating with folks. So if they're having to reshop their insurance because they had a lapse in it, a company is going to go, "Well, you didn't pay your bill. Why would we take you?" That's the
Right.
question they're going to ask. So again, that's another hard thing for homeowners too, is if they make a mistake that we've all made in our lives, they could be penalized for it.
Sure.
So education is important. If you're shopping for that house, obviously you'd call Jake and say, "Hey, Jake, I'm thinking of buying a house out next to in Truckee in Lake Tahoe. I want to be able to ski every day, and I love it up there." And then Jake would be like so excited because he'd love to show you those homes. And then you'd probably talk to your lender. Your lender would have all your information, make sure that you're well qualified so you can be competitive in your offer. And then you call me and I go, "Oh, okay, well, your insurance is going to be very high and very selective, and you're not going to be able to shop for that insurance because realistically, there's only going to be a few plans that will cover a home like that." So, really starting earlier in the process when it comes to your insurance is going to be super important for a lot of people. And realistically, it's not just for the urban areas or the tree areas, it's bringing it along earlier in the process rather than waiting to the last minute so that you can make good choices about your finances, because that's all we can do at this point.
So let me ask you this. So where's like in different areas are going to have different fire zones, right? Because
Right.
there's zones like heavy fire zone. That's where your most expensive places for fire insurance are going to be. And then you got like your oranges. I don't know, it goes down I think to yellow, and then if you're green, you're solid, right? But having finding out first. So if I'm looking up, like let's just go up Highway 50, El
Mhm.
Dorado Hills. Once you start getting past El Dorado Hills into maybe some parts of Cameron Park, you start getting to Camino up that way. That's definitely where you start seeing the fire insurance. And then going out, I mean, you go into volcanoes. Same with Auburn, some areas, Grass Valley. So where are the zones? I guess where do you start
Yeah.
seeing the fire insurance hit up Highway 50 and up Highway 80?
So pretty much anywhere there's an incline in the road, and
I
there's
gotcha.
trees
Okay.
where there's going to be an issue. I live in El Dorado Hills, and my insurance has gone through the roof in the past few years. I'm paying a lot, and I'm really careful about not letting my insurance lapse because I don't know what's next for me. Honestly, I haven't looked because I'm scared to. But it's yeah, Auburn, Placerville, Cameron Park, even parts of El Dorado Hills and Folsom. We're starting to see those fire areas get closer and closer to urban centers. And also, insurance companies are getting more granular about viewing their risk. So, if say there's a whole block and they all have their insurance with one particular carrier, then that insurance carrier might be like, hey, we saw what happened in Paradise, where the whole town was obliterated. We really don't want to take on a lot of risk in a little area. So they're
Sure.
looking at it in a lot of different ways. And realistically, knowing that those forested areas are going to be harder, and that anything that's kind of a non-standard house is going to be harder is what people need to know. And then early, you shop early, and then you try to figure out the best way that you can so that you can be prepared for those moments if that's the house that you love.
Yeah. And you're a broker, right? So you have access to multiple different sources. So that's where you kind of come in to shop, help them find the most affordable based on their needs and what that looks like. Is that correct, right?
That's 100% correct. So I've been in insurance for over a decade, and I've been with a lot of the big name companies, kind of seeing where the insurance markets were headed. I moved to a brokerage model so that I had client choice, which is what we all
Sure.
want, is to be able to shop for the best thing at the best price. Not the best price all the time, but the best thing for the best price. And that's really positioning people well, because as you and I both know, a home is one of the biggest assets most people ever acquire in their lives, and making sure that that's well protected in the event of a bad situation is going to be so important for them as we move forward into the future.
And also too, from my experience, what you'll see is every lender. So if you're financing it, every lender is going to run a fire zone map on your property. And if you're in a fire zone, you have to get the fire insurance to actually close on that particular loan with the lender. In addition to that, what I've seen is why it's so important to start early is I've also seen where the fire insurance quote comes back, and then all of a sudden it's at a price point that affects your loan too, because they base loans off how much money you have coming in versus what you're paying out, and then all of a sudden your purchasing power sometimes will shrink on that, or it comes in better. I've seen it where it's like we thought it was going to be $4,000 a year, and it comes back at two, and we're like, okay, awesome. So definitely you got to hit that early and figure that out. So that's where you come in, and that's where communication with like myself. If I'm helping someone out there shopping, I'm going to go and say, okay, we're looking in kind of some areas. And I've called you before, and it's like, hey, is this a fire area? And you're like, no, it's not. You're good. But if you go up 100 yards, be careful, right? Or a mile, because that's you're going to start jumping into that fire space.
Exactly. And, we're not just looking at fire zones in California. There's a lot of flooding zones out here too.
Sure.
So that's where communication with your preferred agent, where your knowledge of the areas is so important for your clients, and that making sure that your realtor has a professional team that they can rely on for good information. So clients are armed with that coming into a situation is of a lot of value to people, and helping them be just competitive and figuring out what's best for them and their families, and not finding a dream home and then getting stuck in the loan process because things are
Sure.
unaffordable.
Yeah, 100%. You got to budget for it, right? I mean, it's just so it's a fact of life out here. We always say we kind of pay for California, right? We pay for
Right.
the sunshine. We're also paying for the fires too, I guess. So,
Yeah.
so
We're
that's
paying for sunshine, fire, and flood now.
yeah, right, exactly. So, it's kind of it is what it is, and you just have to get understand the fire and stuff. But some people just don't even know, and then all of a sudden they go through this process and get into this contract. So that's why we're kind of talking today about this, and really talking about, well, what is it, some unknown things that you can run into when you're out there shopping for a home. Now, on that this topic of fire, and then we'll kind of jump to the next topic. What on average, let's say I'm moving to, and I know I'm not going to hold you to this, right? Because you got to
Thank
get
you.
out. But what are you seeing like? Because it increases as you go further up the hill too, right? So like Placerville is probably going to be more. Grass Valley is going to be more. You get to Camino, that's probably more. What do those run? I mean,
The numbers.
guess we'll call
Yeah.
it guess.
So we can guesstimate. So realistically, your insurance costs are based on, location, location, location. That's a big factor,
Sure.
but also the square footage of your home.
Okay.
So a 2,000 square foot home is going to be very different in cost from a 4,000 square foot home. Obviously, that's
Sure.
double the amount of rebuilding cost that the insurance company has to take into consideration. But so if you're looking in a fire zone where it's, like Auburn or Placerville or one of those areas, and you have, a 2,000 square foot home, it can run you from $2,000 to $5,000 a year,
Okay.
ballpark. And I'm going
Okay.
to say ballpark, and also caveat of general information. Everyone has different insurance needs. As an insurance broker, I'm very strict about my minimums that I'll do for clients after having been through some catastrophic events with clients. But also at the same time, that's why sitting down with someone and not, taking chat GBT or what you read on the internet to figure out what your insurance needs are really important too.
Gotcha. Yeah, 100%. So let's anything you want to add to that, or anything to the fire insurance, flood insurance genre? I mean, what flood insurance? We're looking at Natomas is a flood area. Um, let's see, parts of um, that's area south of Natomas, out by that kind of the Meadowview type area. You also got the West Sacramento. I'm thinking
Land
is a
Park can
Land
be,
Park.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, so definitely reach out. Happy to share where those are before you start shopping or whatever that looks like. So, what anything else you want to add around that in the insurance or anything in that
So
realm?
I mean, I just want to, I think, put it out there that, even though it's expensive, it's super important to make sure people have the appropriate coverage, because if your risk is higher than the insurance company is saying you have more risk, you have more risk. So we just want to make sure that people are well protected and well taken care of. As far as flood insurance goes, again, you would reach out to Jake and say, hey, is this in a flood zone anywhere near a levee and things of that nature? But there are options for flood insurance too that aren't just the normal flood insurance that you can purchase through the government, and FHA loans even allow that now. So there's some ways to mitigate the cost there too. And if you have a savvy team on your side, you'll be able to figure that out.
100%. Now, this was interesting too. Is we think of homeowners insurance and we think of like a casualty insurance, but then there's also the layers of people who are investors who have rental properties, and there's some subsets of insurance that when we talked about it seemed like pretty cool options. You were telling me like, let's say you own a condo and you're above another unit and something floods and you affect the other unit, or something like that. So share with some interesting subsets around that. And how does that work? Is it you, let's say I own a rental property and then are they add-ons to the policy, or what's that look like? Maybe some that someone might not know about, but could be super useful. And yeah, I'd love to hear that.
Sure. So as I said, I'm a landlord and an insurance investor, or a real estate investor and an insurance agent. So unfortunately, I've had claims as well. So I have some perspective on these things. So if you are a investor, important thing to know. I mean, most of us, we espouse putting things in LLCs and separating them out. That doesn't happen all the time. Just be very honest, right? But when that doesn't happen, if you are purchasing insurance for your house and you have it for your rental property, you are bundled into that moment. So if something happens on your rental property, it affects your life. If there is a liability claim that you do not have coverage for, your properties are not separated away from your personal assets, that they can come after you for that. So a lot of times when people take into consideration the cost of kind of setting up business, as it were, for being a landlord, they don't really understand that those two things are intertwined. So they're also intertwined if you make a claim. So say for me, for example, and I was telling you about the situation with my condo where I had a pipe burst in the house. Um, and the water went down below to the condo below us. So it was a situation where I of course, had a panicking moment, even being a little bit more seasoned in this. And I had to reach out to the property management company. I had to get the covenants from the condo association. I worked with the insurance company that was insuring the condo, and I had to layer in all those different things to make sure, one, that the repairs were done for both properties,
Right.
unfortunately. And then on top of that, the landlord below me was super litigious. And I needed that protection in there as well. But we had gotten in the past where we were kind of looking like insurance was more of a home warranty situation. So if
Yeah.
anytime there was a problem, people would just pick up the phone and call their insurance company.
Sure.
Um, we really can't do that anymore because of the hardening of the markets and kind of how claims follow people. And then, especially if you are an investor or a landlord and you're doing that kind of situation, you're affecting all of your properties if they're not separated out, and you're increasing your insurance costs and the potential for you being dropped or not being able to actually search for new insurance if there's a price increase. Um, all of those things are affected by the choices that you make when it comes to your properties. So it was really important for me to make sure that I was covered, that I was protected from a litigious neighbor, and that things were done so that I would not get fined by my HOA or sued by anyone in this situation. But because I had appropriate coverage and I also had my deductible set a little bit higher, I felt comfortable using my insurance in this moment because it was a time when I really needed it.
Yeah.
Um, so I know that's a long story and kind of circuitous, but there are times where people call the insurance company and they're like, it's their rental property and there's a leak that came from their dishwasher that is not going to be covered by insurance. But instead of
Okay.
calling their agent to talk through this, they call the insurance company, there's a claim put in, and then when they go to shop for insurance next year, there's a whole bunch of companies that won't take them. So
Yeah.
that can happen if you do it on your personal property or your rental property, it affects all of the properties.
So do you have additional coverages, being like a investor type of insurance policy? Are there different additional coverages you can purchase, and what those look like?
Yeah, so definitely with a landlord policy or an investor policy, and I'm going to talk about landlord and then investor a little bit. As a landlord, you have options for different levels of coverages that a normal homeowner wouldn't be able to access. So I have a carrier right now that I love to write landlord insurance through that has bed bug protection in there.
Oh
It
wow,
also has eviction protection in there. And if you live in
that's
California,
yes. Eviction coverage in California
right?
is massive, hundred
Yeah,
percent.
it's just it's all of these unexpected things that we're trying to plan for, but they end up being very expected at the end of the day with, just where we live and that sunshine tax we pay. Um,
I think it's important too to know this as well, is there's a lot of people right now where they need to move and make the transition. Maybe they're upsizing, downsizing, and so what they do is they say, hey, you know what? I got this sub 3% interest rate on my current home. I'm just going to rent it out, and what I'm going to do is cash flow that amount and make up the difference on the purchase of a new home. However, I wonder, they don't switch their coverage. And so now they still have the same coverage. And moving into the new property, they definitely need to look at, okay, what coverage should I get for my rental now that it's a rental? And that's a different coverage than a primary residence, correct?
100%. So that
Yeah.
is a different coverage. And if you don't have the appropriate coverage on your property, there is a possibility they could deny your claim. I'm just going to put
Yeah.
it out there. Because
Yeah.
if you are not owner occupied, you say you're owner occupied, they can look at that negatively. In addition to that, again, as a landlord, requiring renters insurance. from all of your tenants is kind of a must now,
Yeah.
especially if they have pets. You're taking on their liability as a landlord if they don't have insurance to protect themselves. Or if there's something that happens, there's a part of insurance called loss of use insurance. And again, I apologize if I'm getting into the weeds. You know how much I love
You're
insurance.
good. You're good. Go ahead. Go for it.
Okay, so loss of use insurance protects people when they are removed from a space for a covered event. So tenants can have loss of use coverage written into their, and it's part of the policy. So it's not expensive. They can have that written into their renter's policy. So if something happens to the place that they're staying, they have a place where they get to live rather than having to pitch a tent somewhere.
Yeah, that's huge.
It's huge, and I've said this a few times. I've been through some catastrophic claims events with folks. I was up in the Chico and Paradise area. The people who did not have loss of use on their renters policies ended up living in a Walmart parking lot, or their
Mm,
landlord paid for
so
them.
terrible. That's so
It
terrible.
it's so important to have that. So another thing that you can do to help guide your tenants in being fiscally responsible is to have that very low cost coverage that will protect you liability wise and also protect them from future bad situations.
Yeah. Question for you, and I just thought of this. This wasn't kind of on the topic, but ADUs, they're becoming popular. And I'm sure with ADUs now, you would have to get a separate coverage as well, being that there's now two homes. And is there special ADU type insurance coverages that you can add to your home?
Yeah, so definitely ADUs are a hot topic in the insurance industry. I say hot
Yeah.
topic.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but anytime there's a separate living area that people are in, and you have a tenant in there, hypothetically, and you have a separate kitchen and a separate bathroom, it's not just like your storage shed. It's not adding a storage shed to your property, which is a small outlay of premium. So sometimes, depending on the type of insurance, you either have to have a separate policy for it or they just need to be aware of it. And the treatment of that is a conversation that you have to have with your insurance agent to make sure that you're well protected. Because then again, if you have people on your property that are not your family, or even if they are your family, which can be worse, you want to make sure that you're protected.
Yeah.
Speaking from experience.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, that's definitely all great information. There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of people. I mean, I learned things today, right? Like different things I could do and think about it. And just even talking to you around that, and we educate our partners, our agent partners on the team, so that they know what they're how they're guiding their clients. Because a lot of people with the insurance, it's like you get into a contract and to buy a house, and you're sitting there and it's like the mortgage guy says, hey, you need to go get this insurance, and then they just call, send them somewhere, and they don't really understand it or understand their options. So here's what I want to do is, Alex, how do they get a hold of you if they want to? Let's say they want to look at their options. Obviously, I'll share your information, and or they want to make sure they have the right coverage, or they want to shop their current policy, see if they can save some money. What would that look like?
So essentially, I offer that to all people, whether it's a consultation about their insurance, a good review, or an actual shopping, depending on what's going on. So, folks, if they want to reach out, they can call, they can email me, but my phone number is 916-244-1711. That's a phone number they can call or text, and then we can have a conversation about what good insurance should look like for them. And if they're in the process of shopping, if they're a client who's working with you, Jake, especially, I just want folks to really get ahead of the market so they're not surprised.
Sure.
So shop early, so it gives you more time to make decisions. And then closer you get to your close date, the less tolerance you're going to have for conversations because, that can be a stressful moment. And then real quick, just a few takeaways if I could for folks.
100%. 100%. Go for it.
Really, that shopping early, kind of knowing what you're getting into a contract with insurance. So you want to make sure that it's appropriate for you. So if something bad happens, like say that ADU, someone's making ramen and forgets to put water in it and it catches on fire, you want that covered, right?
Right.
So those two things, and then making sure that you know what coverage is, so you know when it's appropriate to make a claim, and you have a relationship with someone you can call to have those conversations. So shopping early, being educated, making sure that you have appropriate coverage, and knowing when to put in a claim. Those are things that I tell all clients when I have a conversation with them.
And I think insurance, if I were to look at it, being all my years, 21 years in mortgage, in home buying, I think it's one of the least talked about topics. I mean, literally, it is probably one of the least talked about topics, and actually one of the least educated topics out there. Because, and I think, well, you know this stat? I think people change insurance every like 13 years, and
Yeah.
so when I think of that, it's probably because they put it in place, nothing happens, or maybe something happens, right? But making sure you have the right coverage and everything like that. So we appreciate you, Alex. Thank you so much. We'll be definitely, all of our clients will be talking with you. And then if you want to reach out to her, more than welcome to. She's an amazing insurance agent. And as always, if you like our topics, subscribe buttons down below. You're going to see a lot of conversations I'm going to be having with different professionals in the industry covering topics that you might not know about or you need to know when buying or owning a home. So cheers. Hope you have a great day. We'll talk
Thanks,
soon.
thanks, Jake.